All right. How's everyone doing? Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I've noticed, though, that no one's here at the start anyway. So I thought, let's be slightly late. But basically, I've been rushing around because I went to the gym and then I was like, suddenly decided to do this live stream. And so I'm a little late. So I hope you don't mind. But thank you for everyone who's here. Yeah, so I just thought I'd go through this Farage press conference today because, well, I've been reacting to some things that are not very contemporary. So I thought it'd be fun to react to something that's actually just happened today. And I guess I'm just addicted to streaming now, apparently. And it was pretty interesting because you never know with Farage, do you, what you're going to get, whether you're going to get something quite disappointing or something suddenly quite good. And he's often sort of just behind the curve. And he's sort of going, Towler suggested that was even a good thing about him, that he's kind of behind the curve, that he kind of always knows where it's about to go. So Farage has been a bit soft lately, but now he's figured out, oh, the people of Britain are getting pretty hard line. So, he's kind of matching their energy with this hard line new approach on crime. And yeah, someone's saying I was about to watch myself. Yeah, well, I thought it's a fairly dry thing, but if I watch it with you, maybe it'll be a bit more interesting for us all. That's what I thought. I've seen a tiny bit of it today. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to turn my fan on. It is actually hotter than I anticipated. Look at this, 3 streams in and already just incredibly unprofessional. Just getting used to all the controls. Here I am. All right, so someone says, I like your... Oh, no, it's talking to Daniel. Says, I like Daniel Bostock. Someone's saying, you like your songs. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Is this the entire stream or just Nigel Farage? I'm not sure what that means. We go through the Farage thing and I talk about it. That's how it's going to work. We'll start it in a minute. We may as well start it now. I mean, why not? So let's go.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry about the fire alarm, but hey, you know what? We do have a bit of an emergency. Everyone knows we're living in broken Britain, and perhaps one of the worst symptoms of that is living increasingly in a lawless Britain. You might have seen some of the polling figures that were produced yesterday.
You know about the volume.
Most people think
Britain
has become lawless.
Yes,
and quite extraordinary to see that 57% of women feel it's not safe to walk on the streets of London. And that wasn't just at night time, that was at any time of the day. We're going to begin this press conference with Councillor Lila Cunningham speaking to us. She has been a prosecutor for many years at Westminster Magistrates Court, and she's going to tell us a little of what it's like being a mother, bringing up young children and teenagers in London. Lila.
Oh, yeah, so this is Lila. So, yeah, someone's asking who the speakers are. Yeah, it's Lila Cunningham and Sarah Poachin, and then they do a press conference, I believe. So this is Lila Cunningham. She's a Muslim with 7 kids, and she's kind of the new person that reformers are selling. She's a former Tory councillor, now a Reform councillor, and it's like, look how stylish she is, and she looks cool. And she's a Muslim, but she doesn't like Islamophobia laws. I kind of wonder who that's appealing to in terms of voters, because whenever Muslims are polled, they always seem fairly hard line, don't they? You don't hear many Muslims saying, we need to get rid of all these Islamophobia laws, but she's like a kind of cool Muslim. And I'm not sure if it's about the voter base or if it's actually about Zia Yusuf's control of the party, or if you want to get even more conspiratorial, is it about the establishment sort of saying, hey, reform's an option, and look, let's all be nice to Muslims. You know, if you want to say they're kind of containment and controlled opposition, you do sort of wonder. People are trying to put stuff in the chat that will get me probably banned and also probably killed. So maybe don't do that. But I don't know what the rules are on YouTube. So anyway, so that's Lila Cunningham. She's and she's got 7 kids, incredibly. So I'm amazed she's even managed to get to the press conference, to be honest with you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lila Cunningham. I'm a Reform Westminster City Councillor, a mum of 7, and a former senior Crown Prosecutor. And I'm delighted to be part of this campaign on law and order with Sarah and Nigel. A few weeks ago, I defected from the Tories because I just couldn't defend their abysmal record anymore. And as we've seen over the past year, Labour's no better. The truth is, both parties have failed this country on an epic scale. We learnt last week that both parties conducted covert, state-backed people smuggling, aid by us. And I can assure you, only reform will smash that gang once and for all. But speaking out and defecting came at a cost. I lost the job I love at the CPS. Why? Because I told the truth. I told the truth about the lack of policing. I told the truth about the online safety bill that silences freedom of speech. And I told the truth about certain Muslim communities in this country that have brought immeasurable shame and fury on the wider community, and nobody dared call it out. But the CPS didn't like that, just like the establishment doesn't like reform. They call us extreme or far right. Fine, so be it.
I call them centre
We will
left.
never apologise
Or
for
far
standing up
left.
for Britain and saying the truth. But for me, it's never just about politics. It's personal. Every time my kids leave the house, I feel sick. 2 of them have been mugged, 1 at knife points. I had to chase the muggers down myself. Not enough resources, I was told by the police. In fact, the local press have called me vigilante mum for my crime-fighting efforts locally. But my husband worries that I'll be stabbed one day. But what am I supposed to do?
Welcome to
What
London,
are any of us
2025.
supposed to do when those in charge do absolutely nothing?
Good question.
I've just had enough of hearing about daily muggings, daily stubbings. I've had enough of seeing gangs roam my streets in balaclavas, terrifying my children. And I've had enough of hearing a foreign rapist's human rights mean more than ours.
Fair.
I ask myself every single day, how the hell did we get here? And it's because of the political choices made by Labour and Conservatives. And they repeat the same empty line. We're tough on crime. No, they're not. They've left us with no police, no prisons, and no border control. The Tories in 14 years led in 6.5 million people. Thousands upon thousands of unvetted men who don't share our values and don't respect women. And if you dare complain, they call you racist or far right and arrest you for hate speech. I've seen it. As a senior Crown prosecutor, I prosecuted far too many hate speech and religiously aggravated crimes. More often, a drunken rant that presented no harm and no threat. And now they want to go even further by bringing in a so-called Islamophobia law, which criminalizes criticizing Islam. That isn't justice, it's censorship.
Nick Timothy's been really good on that, by the way. All his work on the Islamophobia law, it's unbelievable. If you look at the Labour, the page about it, the stuff they say, it's so incredibly biased from the start. They're like, yeah, we're canvassing opinion about why Islamophobia is terrible and everyone who's Islamophobic is evil. And it's like, you're not really canvassing opinion there, are you? So anyway, this is Reform's gimmick, a Muslim who's against that kind of thing.
Britain doesn't need more speech laws. It needs more police, more prison cells, and a justice system that actually protects the public, not censors it. The Tories failed to build prisons. In fact, they built just under 500. Yet a quarter of our prisons are foreigners, including rapists, that we cannot deport because both parties keep us wedded to the ECHR.
Well, obviously, I hate the ECHR, but if we're going to be technical, that was fact-checked. So she says a quarter of our criminals are foreign-born. Did she say, or foreigners? It's apparently it's 12%, and 27% are ethnic minorities. So, I mean, you know, broadly, of course, it's right, but just for a little, if you're a fan of fact-checking there.
And to really rub salt in our wounds, Labour are letting dangerous criminals out to free up space.
Yeah, that is sick.
This isn't just incompetence.
Operation
It's a
Arkham
betrayal.
Asylum.
It's proof that Labour and Conservatives have stopped fighting for you. They've surrendered our country, our safety, and our country. And that's the reason I joined Reform. Nigel is the only leader with the guts to do what it takes to fight back for us, for Britain. And I'll end with a promise. To every person, every parent, every teenager, every woman walking home alone, every shopkeeper who's had enough of daily shoplifting, and everyone who's had enough, you are not alone. We see you, we hear you, and we are coming to fight for you. The old party sold us out to cheap Labour, open borders, and political correctness. But Britain deserves better. We paid our taxes. We followed the rules. We did our bit. But they turned their back on us. We will be the toughest, clearest, most unapologetic government on crime this party has ever seen. It's finally our turn. It's time to put British people first. It's time for reform. Thank you.
All right. What do we think of her speaking? She's obviously a new speaker. She's a little bit wooden. She was all right. I mean, I did 11 years of stand-up comedy, so of course I'd have thrown some jokes in. I'd have absolutely smashed it. And she said this party when she meant this country. But it wasn't totally awful, but I inherently don't trust her. But hey.
Leda, thank you. And yeah, I can imagine the anguish of parents with children, teenagers going out onto the streets. You talked about London, but frankly, we could have talked about any other major city in the country, and the problems might not be quite as acute as London, but it's there and it's real. Now, up next is Sarah Pochin, who of course won the Runcorn and Helsby by-election by the vast winning margin of 6 votes. I was pleased because it was 4 before the recount, so we were going in the right direction. Sarah, before standing for us in that by-election, had for 20 years been a magistrate, and I know feels very strongly on the deterioration of law and order in our country. Sarah.
Thank you, Nigel. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Layla, for your excellent and heartfelt speech. Reform UK now has 2 formidable women that speak with bravery and conviction about what needs to be done to bring back law and order to our streets.
We're the women party.
As a magistrate of 20 years, I believe I am more than qualified to talk with confidence and experience about the changing face of our courts, our prisons, and our society. And qualified to have strong views on the urgent reforms that our judicial system needs to restore the trust of the British people. During my judicial career, I have witnessed significant changes to the kinds of cases dealt with by the Magistrates' Court. 20 years ago, I would deal with numerous shoplifting cases, but in recent times, individuals being prosecuted for shoplifting just doesn't happen. Why? Because shoplifting has become a crime that the police just ignore. The cost to business, the sheer nuisance factor, the abuse of security guards seemingly powerless to apprehend the perpetrators, all of this needs clamping down on. It doesn't matter whether it's a national supermarket or whether it's our local convenience store. Both matter and both deserve better. We need to restore law and order from the bottom up. No crime is too small to be prosecuted and dealt with. We need to restore discipline and respect in our society.
Just a quick one. Someone's saying, why, if it's reform, is it black and yellow? Yeah, black and white. It's black and yellow, isn't it? It's and yellow and white. Yeah, it's different, isn't it? It's like dark reform. It's like when the eyes go, like the laser eyes, whatever they're called. It's like dark reform. Have you also noticed how Sarah Pochin sounds? This is whimsical, but she sounds a little bit like Mary Steenburgen. She's got that kind of wavering voice. Remember her? Wife of Ted Danson. She was in What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I'll get my coat.
Interestingly, one of the last cases I dealt with was a Romanian OCG, organised crime gang, that was running rampage across the northwest, shoplifting on an industrial scale. A good example of how the courts have become reluctant to administer tough justice. I was advised I couldn't send these criminals to prison because they didn't have a criminal record in this country, and as such could not be given a custodial sentence. I'm sure it won't surprise any of you in this room to know that all 4 were duly sent down immediately under my watch. And yet, of course, now, under this woke Labour government, we are experiencing 2-tier justice, where someone who writes an ill-advised tweet goes straight to custody, possibly for 30 months, even with no previous criminal record, or in fact, any dealings whatsoever with the police. I have 2 Lucy Connollys in my constituency of Runcorn and Helsby, one of whom I visited recently in HMP Kirkham. He was released last week on licence, and the other one is still in there until September. What shocking examples they are of inappropriate, politically motivated sentencing. Furthermore, the rise in antisocial behaviour and sexual violence against women and girls in our communities is alarming. And whether we like it or not, both are related to the influx of migrants from certain countries, particularly Afghanistan and Eritrea. We know that Afghanistani men are amongst the largest group of migrants that commit sexual violence against women. I am constantly accused of scaremongering on this issue, by the woke Labour blob. But the British people will not be lied to anymore. We know that we are heading towards a crisis point in our society. And the denial of this by the establishment is nothing short of treacherous. Recent unrest in Northern Ireland and Epping should serve as a stark warning to this government that the British people will not put up with this betrayal for the next 4 years.
That's certainly true. I mean, there's no sense that Westminster understands the level of anger, the level of radicalisation, which we're seeing in things like Epping. I say radicalisation, I don't mean that British people are suddenly part of fringe groups or something. I just mean that they're so sick of anarcho-tyranny, criminals getting off, people punished for tweets, and obviously boats coming in, and people raping children a week later after arriving on a boat. So people have just gone completely. People have just the Englishman has begun to hate Anne Woman. Basically, someone's saying I must fancy Mary Steenburgen. No, I'm just a film geek. Don't get me started on music; it'll take over the whole stream. Anyway, press on.
We also need to restore the confidence of the British people in our police force. We've had enough of woke policing, enough of our police being in denial about the increasing threat to our own safety from the influx of illegal immigrants, enough of police no longer using stop and search to tackle knife crime, enough of police ignoring mobile phone theft, ignoring the rise of blatant cannabis use on our streets, sympathising with protest groups that simply do not reflect the views of the majority of the British people. Police need to police with impartiality. A reform government will address these issues and restore a strong police presence in our communities to protect our citizens. Turning to the courts, I have seen significant changes in the attitudes of our CPS and our probation service over the years due to funding cuts, pressure on the system, and a softening approach to crime. These days, a defendant is often wise to playing the anxiety and depression card when faced with a community penalty, thus removing that sentencing option from the magistrates. 20 years ago, this just didn't happen. Many defendants these days are claiming universal credit or disability allowance.
Can you imagine doing that, by the way? Citing anxiety 20 years ago. I mean, when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have it. We didn't have mental health even. You just cracked on no matter what it was, right? Imagine citing anxiety in the 80s, unheard of.
Is reflected in this country's spiralling benefits
I know
bill.
the 80s isn't 20 years ago, but you know what I mean.
This makes the amount of any fine imposed or amount of compensation awarded to a victim pitifully low. And yet they all have money for cigarettes, vapes, smartphones, Sky TV, XL bullies, you name it. I've seen it.
She's going full UK aesthetics there. They've got the vapes, they've got the XL bullies. Who's she talking about? She's talking about everyone that appears on the UK aesthetics Twitter account. I want to see Sarah talking about drug per Cunley.
Those that do receive unpaid work in the community often can't complete it, actually through no fault of their own, but because of our under-resourced probation service. A probation service that this Labour government is planning to load with more responsibilities by the early release of dangerous criminals, a recipe for disaster. I resigned as a magistrate to fight the Runcorn and Helsby by-election. the shocking truth is that even if I had not resigned when I did, and for the reason I did, that being, I believe you can never mix the judicial system with politics, I fear I would have done so by now anyway, because of the two-tier justice this country is now experiencing. But having won that by-election, I am now in this position to speak out with a strong voice on these issues. Whether it's the judicial system, the prison service, the probation service, or the actions of the police, Britain needs reform. People need to feel safe again. Over the next few weeks, I will be fronting up a campaign of law and order policies detailing how Reform UK would restore confidence and trust in the system. Thank you. I would now like to hand over to Nigel, who will talk in more detail about the policies we're launching today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Sarah, thank you very much indeed. And yes, this press conference this morning, Lawless Britain, is the beginning of a 6-week campaign. We will, over the course of the next few weeks, highlight individual areas, go into much more detail, and we'll also have one or two quite well-known people appearing on our stages, coming sort of out of obscurity, political obscurity, to support what we are trying to do.
Probably means Ant Middleton, doesn't he?
One of the things I think that has that sort of really led to deterioration of trust in politics are successive Home Secretaries telling us crime is falling. You hear it every year. Crime is falling. So please don't worry your poor little heads. Well, that's because the crime survey for England and Wales is based on completely false data. If you look at police recorded crime, which is what we've done for our research all through this, you can see that actually there are some significant rises in crimes of all kinds, particularly crimes against the person. We're actually facing, in many parts of our country, nothing short of societal collapse. If people are scared to go out of the shops, scared to let their kids out, that is a society that is degrading. And it's happening very, very rapidly. I'm astonished that there has been so little debate in Westminster amongst our political classes on this issue, because I'm sure they must, in their MPs' inboxes, get members of the public telling them just how grim things really are. Sarah mentioned the word respect. Respect for those in uniform has declined massively. The criminals don't particularly respect the police and can act in many cases with total impunity. Just as worrying, if not more so, is huge numbers of law-abiding, tax-paying Britons have also lost respect for the police, but in a different way. The idea, the concept that we're living in a system of two-tier policing and two-tier justice under two-tier care has really taken hold. You only have...
True. Don't know what that buzzing is. Hope that goes. That's the key point, isn't it? He's making the criminals don't respect the police because they have no authority and they kneel, and some of them are small women and things. And the aware person who is somewhat aware of two-tier justice doesn't respect the police either because of the politicization of the police and the anarcho-tyranny aspect. And that is the anarcho-tyranny, isn't it? Criminals do what they want. The innocent are punished. I have to say anarcho-tyranny in every stream I'm sponsored. But yes, that is the key thing. No trust about the police's ability to get it done on the streets, and you want them to be tougher there, like with the Manchester airport thing. But then, in other ways, you don't want them to be tougher because they've got the politicized police and the political persecutions of people like Lucy Connolly, and that is the dual shitstorm of the police now.
To look at the reluctance to prosecute those violent thugs in Manchester airport who beat up those police officers. It took months and months and months for any prosecution to be brought. And I suspect the reason that it happened is because Reform said if they didn't, we would take out our own private prosecution. And yet, Lucy Connolly and others like that, and she received a 31-month prison sentence, albeit for saying something deeply intemperate and wrong. Of that, there's no question. Her case was dealt with in days. So we are in a real mess. Just looking and thinking about London for today, London, 1 in 3 people at some point have been subject to phone theft. It's almost unbelievable. It's almost unbelievable. The number's so big. Had a case in my family a few months ago. Somebody at Victoria Station, a relation of mine, punched, phone taken, but they had a tracker on the phone. So we could see exactly where the phone was going. And I assume it wasn't just one phone, there would have been a couple of hundred phones. We even gave the police the address of the house in southern Buckinghamshire where the phones had gone to. The police took no action whatsoever. And you can just walk down Oxford Street, Regent Street any day, and you can see the moped gangs running amok with hardly anybody ever being arrested. Shoplifting.
Yeah, it's happened to me as well. I got my phone nicked. Did he say 1 in 3? I can't remember if he says it there or I heard him say it elsewhere. 1 in 3. I was too bit annoyed about that crackle. I don't know what that's doing, but 1 in 3 people, I think, in London have had their phone swiped, and I'm one of them. It's incredibly common. They can just do what they want. Now I never get it out anymore. You find techniques, but it's like we have to live like that now in the low trust collapsing society. He even said societal collapse, didn't he? He went hard in that one. I think the bit I watched was on the Telegraph stream, so maybe Nigel's stream is going to be crackling, in which case I might swap.
In London. And by the way, when I give you these figures, these are the reported figures. Bear in mind that most of us now don't even bother to report crime. We can't see the point. If it comes to theft from our properties, we worry what it might do to our insurance premiums. And most people don't report stuff because what is the point? But quite extraordinary that in London alone, shoplifting should be up by 150% since 2021. Muggings in London, up 26% just in the last 2 years. But I sense, again, many people, frankly, just too embarrassed to report the fact that they have been mugged. Taxi crime is another reason why people are leaving. John Friedrichsen, the shipping magnate, he's going, taking his billions with him, saying London are increasingly reluctant to come to London because they know what is likely to happen to them once they arrive. So it is a very, very serious problem. But there's a parallel. Okay,
looks like they've sorted that sound. Every stream had terrible sound, by the way, whether it was Telegraph, Mirror, Sun, they all had cock-ups and things breaking, FYI.
From which I think we can draw great inspiration. I worked in the 1980s for a couple of Wall Street houses in my days in the commodity markets. And I remember if you left a restaurant in New York at 8, 9 o'clock at night, you made sure the taxi was there waiting. The guy gave you a wave so that you literally spent sort of 5 or 10 seconds leaving the venue. So bad was street crime in New York. And yet, 10 years later, you could wander about New York at 2 o'clock in the morning, being really unconcerned that anything would go wrong. And this, of course, was the inspirational mayor, Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah, actually, I watched a bit before about the mobile phones, and I thought it's pure Giuliani stuff. It's pure broken windows. And then he actually said, isn't it? You can't really go wrong with that, can you? If you're a party like Reform, who doesn't want law and order? Well, criminals who probably don't vote. I mean, everyone wants law and order. Everyone knows crime's out of control. You basically can't go wrong with it. Farage has been dodgy on some other things, but this is just like a slam dunk, isn't it? Whether you can do it or not, of course, separate question. But the broken windows thing, the stealing mobile phones, low-level crimes, sorting them out, and then the rest of the things will improve. It's just such a no-brainer. Although the other parties can't do it because they inherently sympathise with the criminal, especially Labour. They love the criminal, especially the foreign criminal. Labour's absolute favourite person is someone who gets off a boat, rapes someone. That's their absolute favourite person. And their absolute most hated person is the law-abiding British citizen. So that's an absolute open goal for Farage, which he, to be fair, is taking here.
Who followed the broken windows theory, which is if you deal with crime, you deal with graffiti, you deal with litter, you deal with things at the ground level, that helps stop crime going further up. And we're doing the opposite. You know, since 2014, you can shoplift up to £200, and frankly, nothing is going to happen to you.
Madness.
Layla would not have been prosecuting them. Sarah would not have been hearing the cases. We've just accepted that shoplifting is okay. Drugs being smoked openly on the streets, that apparently is just okay. So what we've done is we've raised the level of what we now deem to be acceptable behaviour. And of course, what happens if you go lax on it? Well, of course, crime moves up to fill that gap and then moves on further still. So I want to be absolutely clear at the start of this 6-week campaign that Reform will be the toughest party on law and order and on crime that this country has ever seen. We will aim to cut crime by half in the first 5 years of a Reform government. We will take back control of our streets. We will take back control of our courts, of our prisons. And if you're a criminal, I am putting you on notice today that from 2029, or whenever that may be, either you obey the law or you will face very serious justice.
See, it's good. I mean, it's good for two reasons. I mean, one, being the toughest on law and order, toughest party we've ever seen. Who doesn't want that at this point? But also it sets up Farage as the very realistic prospect of government. This whole thing feels like they're going to get in, right? And all the polls say that. So it's a very serious bid to say, look, these are our actual policies. We're getting very serious. So, yeah, and obviously I've dissed Reform a lot. It's so funny with Reform because I've criticised them a lot. And at first, everyone on my channel was going, how dare you, Nick? You're a traitor, and especially on Twitter. But then now people on my channel have completely turned and gone, right, we've had enough of Reform, then they're no good. And today I put out this podcast with Lee Harris. He was making the case for Reform, and everyone's going, no, he's full of it. Whereas very recently they were attacking me for the opposite. So, but this is what Reform are like, aren't they? They could swing back again with this kind of thing, and again people will be going, oh, actually they're all right. This is the nature of Reform UK.
Now, in terms of policy proposals, yep, I'm going to reiterate the point. Zero tolerance policing. Every single shoplifting offence, however small, should be prosecuted. Every single mobile phone that is stolen, if we can track it, we need to go to the addresses and find out who these people are. Stop and search. Stop and search in areas where knife crime is prevalent will go on up until saturation point, until we drive knives off the street. And believe me, this is a policy that I know from my campaigning recently around the country, supported by people right across the political spectrum. And if we have to build more knife arches at the entrance to train stations or bus stations or whatever it may be, then we will do it.
Nice. It went a bit Bane for a second in my head there. Stop and search will go on. Sorry. So sorry.
Fast track arrest. We believe that is very, very important. And if we have to open pop-up custody suites and centres around the country, we'll do so, because many police stations not just closing in huge numbers around the country, but many police stations, including a local one in Clacton, have lost their custody suites. So we believe that fast-track arrest, holding people, is right. And perhaps the biggest pledge that we would make today is to say 30,000 more police over a 5-year term of a parliament. And we will scrap all diversity, equality, and inclusion roles. And we will aim for a higher and physically tougher standard of police officer on our streets. I think that if criminals slightly fear the police, that is a desirable place for us to be as a society.
Fear's back. I love it. You do need a bit of fear in the criminals. At the moment, the fear is in the ordinary innocent person, and those are the two choices, really, aren't they? It's quite bold policies. Halving crime, he said, in 5 ye's, and he's setting out his stall there. It's a big promise. 30,000 more police officers. That would be good. And getting rid of DEI, which literally everyone wants to do. But he always says that one.
I knew a chap who'd served in the Grenadier Guards. He'd served in Afghanistan. He'd done 2 tours, one of them a very, very brutal tour. He came back in his late 20s, applied to join a county police force, but was rejected. Rejected. A fit young guy, an army sergeant who'd done service, told to come back next year because they were having trouble with their quotas. Enough of all that rubbish.
Yeah, and of course the Manchester airport incident with the horrible images and video of the poor woman having her nose smashed in and she's just crying and distraught. I mean, and many people point out it's two things. One, you have a revulsion and this is like terrible, this is happening to this woman. But then at the same time, of course, you're going, why is she out there on the front lines? Completely insane. Obviously doesn't work. So yes, and then so that puts him to head there. And someone, Nick, is saying, courts will be convened, spoils will be enjoyed, blood will be shed. Bane, not something I'm saying.
And in fact, on that theme, we would look very much to go to people who have served in the armed forces, who we think would make ideal police officers. Fast-track courts. We have a massive backlog in all levels of court cases in this country, partly down to the repeated lockdowns that we went through, and partly down to the fact that actually, astonishingly, so many magistrates' courts have closed since 2010. Up to 50% of magistrates' courts closed since David Cameron came to power in 2010. So we would aim to reopen those magistrates' courts, and we would reach out to former and retired magistrates and say to them, please, we want you to come back to this job. Help us in this national effort to catch up with the backlog and to start dishing out proper justice. And of course, we know that 10% of criminals commit 50% of all crime in this country. So it won't surprise you to know that we are not supporters of the Labour government policy of early release for offenders. Weren't some of those scenes outside our prisons deplorable? People being let out, being met by Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces, champagne being opened, and the reoffending rates have been truly horrific. No, we take a very, very different view.
That was incredible, wasn't it, when they were popping the champagne because Starmer let them all out early so we could put people, grannies who tweeted in. I don't know how they survived that. I called it Operation Arkham Asylum, but I don't know how he got away with that. It missed the sort of full force of the law. When I was in the crowd prosecutor, Starmer missed the prosecutor guy, and these criminals are popping champagne. Absolutely disgusting and full on Gotham City stuff.
And we do absolutely think that if anyone commits more than 3, and whilst of course prison should aim initially to rehabilitate and to educate, if people are, convicted of more than 3 serious offences, well, frankly, we think that puts them on a course towards life imprisonment. And the same goes for sexual offenders and violent offenders. We believe they should serve their full term, not just as punishment, but to keep the rest of society safe. So we're very strong on that. Yeah, commit the crime, pay the price, be you a shoplifter, be you someone carrying a knife, whatever it may be. And we would look to free up tens of thousands, up to 30,000 prison places. We will build Nightingale prisons. You remember the Nightingale hospitals? Within 72 hours, hospitals were built, and we'll work with private contractors, but we'll want to use the logistical skills that exist in the army and our armed forces to make this happen. We can build up to 12,000 prison places, and we can do so actually in short order. And there are 10,000.
Did he say up to 30,000 prison places, then said 12,000? Anyway, that's going to be the big takeaway. 2 things, this El Salvador thing that I think he gets to, and also the Nightingale prisons. I love that. We had the Nightingale hospitals. We didn't use them. If you liked Nightingale hospitals, you'll love Nightingale prisons. The reason I'm laughing is it comes from Florence Nightingale. It's like she's associated with helping the sick, but it's like, but what if Florence Nightingale had made prisons? They'd probably be the best prisons in the world. 400
foreign prisoners in our prisons has been mentioned on this platform already. They will be deported back to their home countries. And I think I'm in conversation with Eddie Rama from Albania. And I think he's rather agreed that he will take back all of the Albanian prisoners in this country, which is rather a good thing. And yes, we do think dynamic prison places overseas work. You've seen America doing it recently, but the Scandinavian countries are doing it too. Estonia is quite prepared to take prisoners from this country. And in fact, the Labour government has had those conversations already, but of course, nothing has come to fruition. Denmark sends off prisoners to Kosovo and places like that. It is quite astonishing that to keep a prisoner in a British prison costs nearly £52,000 a year. You could send a child to Eton for that price. So we can send some of our worst violent criminals overseas to serve their terms, then yes. And if that means that Ian Huntley goes to El Salvador, well, our attitude is so be it.
That's a clever one to pick, isn't it? It's quite hard to argue for the Ian Huntley. Hang on, hear me out. Why should Ian Huntley suffer? Not many people are going to go along with that. So yeah, getting rid of Ian Huntley to El Salvador, that's a pretty good sounding policy. And 30,000 months prisoners are repatriated. But yeah, as someone says, we're going to build big prisons, Stuart. Big, beautiful prisons, the biggest the world's ever seen. Well, he is copying Trump here, isn't he? Just purely copying Trump, saying we'll send them to El Salvador. Seems a bit like we should send them somewhere near. You know what I mean? Like, what's happening on Jersey? Can we send them there? But I'm up for sending them to El Salvador. Andrew Neil today was so wet about this. He said that he didn't want this to happen. He was actually quite positive about Farage on the whole. He said that, yeah, these are decent policies. He's up for the Nightingale prisons thing. And, you know, we should start taking him seriously. And we shouldn't just rubbish it because it's Farage. But he said on Twitter, Andrew Neil, Farage is talking about sending British citizens to Salvadorian hellholes. You okay with that? I'm not. And we're like, yes, I totally am, Andrew. And then Oliver Cam, that kind of pro-EU nutcase, he said, no, I'm not. So Andrew Neil is with the sort of EU, Remainer nutters on this. What's wrong with sending them to El Salvador? I think Andrew Neil's way out of touch with the British people there. We'll send them anywhere at this point, if you ask me. Let's carry on.
So we're serious about it. But we also think we can cut the costs of running prisons significantly. It seems that everything the British state does, because it's so highly bureaucratized, costs just so much more than everywhere else. France manages to run its prisoners for an average of £40,000 a year, not the £52,000 a year that it is here. To repeat, today is just the start of this law and order campaign, which will go on over the course of the next 6 weeks. I genuinely think that by standing up, by saying these things, we're striking a chord with the vast majority of the British public. There is nothing left-wing or right-wing about desperately wanting for our society, for our streets, to be a hell of a lot safer than they are today. And as with everything that we do, when we say it, we actually mean it. How about that? Thank you.
Well, no proof of that, but fair enough. It's better than openly loving.
Okay, we have a long list of questions, and as you know, we are unafraid to take any question the media have for us.
Wow, I've just realised this is nearly all questions. I probably took too long on that bit because there's loads of questions we can watch if you want. I love Farage here, like Charlie's Angels. He's got his women. Like, look, who says we've got a women problem? I think you're fine. I've got women on both sides. Love women. And also reminds me of Robert Palmer. Remember, might as well face it. You're addicted to crime. Let's have a look at the questions then.
On my list, I'm beginning with Nick Eardley from the BBC.
Nigel, you've talked a lot about what you would do. New prisons, new pop-up custody suites, deportations, fast-track courts. Presumably you'll need extra police as well if you're going to have crime. How are you going to pay for it? And are voters right to think that Reform is prepared to throw money at problems to solve them? And can I just ask a second question about some of the unrest we've seen in Epping in the last 10 days or so? Sarah talked about it there. What's Reform's position? Do you think it's understandable that this is happening? Or do you agree with the police that it's descended into mindless thuggery?
Thank you. Right, cost. What's it going to cost? I was rather waiting for that one. What's it going to cost? Those proposals, and by the way, a costing sheet is being handed out to you right now with costings for each of those proposals. The cost will be, of that programme, on our arithmetic, £17.4 billion over the course of a 5-year parliament. But you have to look at what the cost of crime is. One think tank recently estimated the cost of crime to be 170 billion a year to the British economy, and goodness knows how much money is being laundered and unpaid taxes. So it isn't really a question of can we afford to do this. It's really a question of we can't afford not to do this. That's just how grim and serious the situation is. Our societies are spiraling downwards. Something needs to happen and happen very quickly. And of course, you'll say, where's the money going to come from? Well, it's a funny one, this, because, whenever we say there should be $1 billion spent on this or that, I'm portrayed as being the great modern day spendthrift socialist. But we are actually advocating cutting huge amounts of public spending, starting with the utterly failed, abysmal HS2 project, which the government is quite happy to spend 50 to 70 billion more pounds on over the course of the next few years. And we've been talking about the cost of net zero to an incredulous press audience. Even the OBR estimate the cost of net zero to be 30 to 35 billion pounds a year. And looking at the upcoming wind auctions, which will take place in August, it seems that Miliband is happy to throw countless billions of subsidy at overseas wind companies. So they're just some of the examples of how we can actually cut expenditure. And we want to reduce the size of a state. I want to be clear about that. We genuinely will reduce the size of a state. And of course, in Argentina, they all said the bloke's a madman, absolute madman with his chainsaw. But look what's happening. He's cut the size of the public sector by about 15%, 20% in some cases. And Argentina is beginning to see the beginnings of an economic miracle. A bigger state does nothing for prosperity. On Epping.
Yeah, Starkey always says we need our Millet and that we're heading towards Argentina. By the way, why does spendthrift mean being extravagant with money and thrifty means being careful with it? Just a point there. Let's see what he's got to say about Epping.
I don't think anybody in London even understands just how close we are to civil disobedience on a vast scale in this country, and I regret saying that.
True.
Of course, there were some bad eggs that turned up at Epping. There were the usual far-right thugs. But equally, what about Antifa? Why are Antifa allowed?
What is Farage on about? The usual far-right thugs. No one thinks there was far-right thugs at Epping, except maybe the far-left BBC. I saw say that, but no one thinks that. You've got women standing up there saying, we're not far-right, we're just worried about our children. Everyone now realizes that. That's a mainstream position now. Even the police were a bit nicer about it and said it was mainly peaceful. Even some of the media have been. Even Sky News, not quite the BBC. How is Farage, one guy that's meant to understand the people of Epping, still calling them far-right? It's literally Starmer's exact phrase, far-right thuggery. It's like, what is the point of you? We've got a Starmer. This is where Farage just completely loses it. You're like, oh yeah, broken windows, crime, yeah, lock them up, Nightingale hospitals, prisons, whatever. And then you're like, far-right thugs in Epping, no. I sound like Thatcher. No.
To go to these demonstrations, to wear balaclavas, to not be identified, to do gestures last night of them shooting at members of the public. Why are Antifa allowed to turn up outside a meeting I do in Cornwall 3 months ago, to assault members of the public coming to a democratic meeting? So, it isn't all far-right thuggery, as you might sometimes hear from our Prime Minister.
Right, but that time you attribute it to Starmer. Why did you say it the first time?
How people in Epping feel? You bet your life I do. You bet your life I do. I'm sitting on my table with two mothers. I mean, 14-year-old girl is sexually assaulted by an Eritrean who'd arrived by boat 8 days before. Don't underestimate the simmering anger and disgust that there is in this country that we are letting in every week. In fact, some days, many hundreds of undocumented young males, many of whom come from cultures in which women and young girls are not even treated as second-class citizens. So the answer is yes, I do understand the genuine upset and anger. And
he's from Ethiopia, wasn't he? Kabutu. Why is he saying Eritrea? So anyway, Farage always sketchy on certain details, but yeah, that was crazy that he said that about far right. And then he kind of wheeled it back and said, "Oh, but don't believe Starmer that they're all right, far right thugs." Why say it at all? No one even thinks that. Again, Farage is to the left. He even said, didn't he, to the New Statesman, he's to the left of the country. Stop it then. You're supposed to be the alternative right-wing party.
I bet you that most of the people outside that hotel in Epping weren't far right or far left or anything like that. They were just genuinely concerned families. Thank you. Christopher Hope, GB News.
Thanks, Nigel Farage. 3 quick questions. No need to raise taxes then. You can fund all this through cutting HS2 and net zero. So no tax increases from today's announcement. Is that what you're saying? Did you leave it there when you found out where your family member's phone was in Buckinghamshire? Did you go and knock on the door, or did you just give up on that one? And just finally, is Sarah Poachin your new shadow Home Secretary?
Right, very, very good. There's no need to raise taxes to do this. There are massive savings we can make, and you'll hear more of that as time goes on. As far as the telephone's concerned, I'm not...
Is it quite weird that those two are just sitting there smiling and not saying anything? They're kind of like ring girls. I'm not trying to be misogynist. I'm saying they should have more of a role, and I'm, as a feminist, a bit disturbed that they're just sitting there smiling, looking nice while Farage talks. They're like his manager in WWE. Sorry.
Was brave. I mean, Layla goes off chasing thugs and criminals. But, if you resist, there is a risk. Look what happened to that young man from Hampshire when someone tried to take his Rolex watch in Knightsbridge. In daylight, a few weeks ago, he resisted. He was stabbed to death. Ugh. So it's a really difficult one. Am I going to sit here and say to the public, you should have a go at these thugs? I don't feel I can do that. It's a matter of individual conscience. But there are so many people now carrying blades out there that it's genuinely frightening. As far as our new girl, Sarah's concerned, she's not yet Shadow Home Secretary, but we're watching her very closely. and let's see where we are. Ask me that question in a few months' time. And bear in mind, I know you asked this question, it's a perfectly reasonable question, but firstly, the next general election is some way away. I know I need to provide a team of people, across many, many areas. But I would just say this to you. They won't all be MPs or prospective MPs. I'm a great believer that we can bring people in to senior ministerial roles from outside of politics, especially from outside of career politics, and that they can be held to account by committees or by places in the House of Lords or whatever it may be. I think we have to just get rid of the idea that, you become a minister responsible for an area, and after 2 years you get moved on. Well, you've probably barely got your feet under the table or even understand the subject. So the argument for bringing in genuine expertise from outside is very strong, and it's something that we will be doing. It doesn't threaten your position, I promise you. But yes, please.
Chris, on that.
Yeah, it's just some people picking up the WWE analogy. And the other day, someone says that the WWE, Max says, analogy is very apt. Reform is just as performative and fake as professional wrestling. Yeah, we did another stream about Dominic Cummings' speech, and Cummings quoted Rick Rubin, the producer, saying the news is fake, wrestling is real. Just an aside, I guess. Notes,
I've run after my AirPods for about 3 hours across Hyde Park, tracing them. I got on a Lime bike. I called my teenage son. I'm like, I've got them. And I caught up with them in the end. They'd passed it on to someone else because within 10 minutes it was in East London. The next day it was in China. And I've done that with my mobile phone.
What does she mean? She caught up with them and then it was in China. Am I the thick one here? To me, her anecdote is incoherent, but maybe I'm a boomer.
I wouldn't recommend anyone doing it. It's just I've just had enough. But I shouldn't have to risk my life, and that's the real matter of it.
No, absolutely.
No one should take an example from me, but.
No, and welcome to my security team.
Yeah, exactly.
You're now part of it very clearly. Thank you very much. I now have Mari Aurora from Sky News.
Thank you, Mari Aurora from Sky News. You say you want to deport almost 10,500 foreign criminals. So you say countries like Estonia are willing to take them back. Are you confident all of the countries that these people are from will take them back? And in exchange, will you agree to take all of our foreign criminals who are in other countries? And just secondly, on these Nightingale prisons, if you erect these prisons very quickly, how secure will they be? What kind of criminals would you be securing in these Nightingale prisons? Will the public be concerned that they will essentially be able to escape?
Right. The answer to your first question is yes. Of course, we're prepared to take British prisoners from other parts of the world. That's fair, right, and proper. All right, there's no question, argument about that.
Oh, I did see Tim Stanley comment on that on the Telegraph. He said, do you really want to take back Gary Glitter? You've got to take back, someone's going to leave because they don't like Farage, but not me. That's all right, Neil. Yeah, Gary Glitter, he said, do you want to take back Gary Glitter and all these awful people? I mean, there is something in that. But of course, if it means getting rid of loads of criminals, then yes, I suppose.
As I say, I'm in talks with Eddie Rama from Albania. In fact, I might even go and visit him over the course of the summer. Perhaps I'll charter a jet and take a load with me. And look, you know, if countries are reluctant to take back their prisoners, well, we'll make it very straightforward. We'll just end travel. We'll end visa restrictions. So we've got plenty of muscle to be able to do this, and that's right and proper, and it's what we should do. That was for existing prisoners. As I say, you know, the secondary consideration would be that you can send a prisoner to serve their sentence in Estonia, and that's going to cost the British taxpayer about 20,000 a year, as opposed to the current 50,000 a year. And I think that would be overwhelmingly popular with the public. On security, look, we're not talking about building high security prisons. What we are talking about is no longer ignoring crimes that are now considered to be petty. We think all crime is serious. So these Nightingale prisons would be for a lower category of offender, but it would send the message that if you commit crime and you're caught and convicted in this country, you will go to prison. And even if it's just for a few months, but you will go to prison. And we think that's absolutely vital and necessary. Thank you very much. Caitlin Dirty from PA.
Morning. Thank you. I see you give some details in your costings of, former sites that have been converted into prisons. But I was just wondering if in your push to create prison places, whether you would force reform councils to accept prisons in their areas.
Good question. And yeah, if they're the right locations, then yes. And don't forget, you know, I mean, provided we've overcome the security aspect of people escaping, although at the moment, of course, I mean, I was even told the other day by the chief inspector of prisons in this country that up to 10 kilograms in weight of cocaine can now be dropped into prisons using drones. And they even think with drone technology, we're not far away from actually getting prisoners out using drones. So provided there's no risk of people escaping, and given that they're lower level offenders, Caitlin, not violent necessarily offenders, then I think a prison in an area for what is a disused MOD site actually provides quite a lot of well-paid jobs in an area. So the answer to that is yes. Noah Hoffman from The Sun. A lot of questions.
Thank you, Nigel. Two really quick ones. Firstly, have you spoken to any members of the government in El Salvador about them potentially receiving an influx of British pedos and murderers? And secondly, what is your plan of action when lefty civil servants or the woke blob try and stop your crime and justice plan from taking place? And what is your sort of plan of disciplining them and lefty human rights lawyers?
I love the different tone of question.
I haven't spoken to El Salvador yet, but we do know they're quite happy to take American violent offenders. So I don't see any reason why. You know, they want the money, they want the income.
You might want to check that because Starmer went off to Albania, didn't he? They're going to do returns hubs so there's going to be lots of hubs. There'll be brilliant hubs at Albania. And then Albania were like, we're not doing this hubs thing. I don't know where he got that from. He's a dickhead. And it was an embarrassment. So you might want to check with El Salvador before you start announcing it on telly. Now, in terms of, sorry, the second question.
The blob.
Sorry.
Woke lefty, woke blob, Nigel.
You know, we are meeting a level of obstructionism within the county councils already. You know, there is an open fight going on with Warwickshire. We have difficulties in other counties where, you know, even being shown the finances and being shown all the books is proving to be difficult. So you're quite right. You know, the march through the institutions since the premiership of Tony Blair, you know, whether it's through the civil service, whether it's through the education system, whether it's through the quangocracy, which increasingly has more power over individual people's lives than what happens in Parliament. There is going to be one hell of a cultural battle that is going to need to go on. And we're aware of that. We're conscious of that. But we're also conscious that all the while we remain part of the ECHR, and all the while the British judiciary and judges can lean on the ECHR, frankly, very little of what I've said today is actually going to be achievable. And so I think, the sort of first job, the first big job, if reform win the next election, is to deal with this issue. And we are not taking away human rights from people or anything of the kind. We're getting rid of a piece of legislation, of a set of structures put in place with the very best of intentions after World War II, but that are now 3/4 of a century out of date.
Yeah, and this ECHR thing, it's become a kind of race. Who can leave the ECHR first? Suella Braverman did, to be honest, a fairly effective video on it today on Twitter, whatever you think of Suella or the Tories. Very clear video, why we need to leave. She's getting ahead of Kemi Badenoch, who's taking ages to say that she's going to leave and how she's going to do it. But she's trying to do it really thoroughly. Now, and Farage has always said they're going to leave, of course. You've got to leave the ECHR, completely obvious. But a lot of people in the chat sort of saying, don't trust reform, they're not going to do it. And that's how I felt for some time, despite the good press conference, fairly decent press conference today. You just feel the system is so pathological, to use Dominic Cummings' word. After this Afghan thing, you just think, who could possibly fix this system? I said in another country now, we're at the stage where some general with a load of medals and a uniform would take over in a military coup. We're at that kind of stage where you see that if the system can bring in, and it could be like a couple of 100,000 Afghans, because each one it's bringing in something like 8 family members on average. This was said in the Telegraph. You're smuggling in thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of Afghans, some of whom will be terrorists, as Dominic Cummings said. You're going like, what is this country? It's just completely set against the public. It's just heading for chaos, resentment, violence, even more so than it is. And you go, we almost have to get rid of our ruling class in a kind of emergency measure. Someone's saying that's a national state of emergency now. Exactly. It's almost an emergency situation. And will reform in 4 years be enough? I think many people are very skeptical. But how else do you displace a ruling elite? Very, very tricky. Let's plow on anyway. Just my thoughts.
That's how we feel on that. Guys, do you want to?
Yeah.
He's like, guys, do you want to say anything?
Do chip in whenever you want. Camilla Tominey from
Do chip in whenever you want, because they've not been saying anything. That means start talking now. I bet you they will.
It's actually not me. It's my partner in crime.
Okay.
Hello. I'm doing work experience.
Very good.
And 2 questions. One, does reform support chemical castration for prolific sex offenders? It's not on the list.
No.
Suspect. Secondly, you just said you will not be taking human rights away from British prisoners, right? But you've mentioned El Salvador. El Salvador, as I'm sure you know, is in a 3-year-long state of emergency where it detains people without trial, including around 3,500 children. It is notorious for overcrowding, a country in which there are just 70,000 prison spaces with 109,000 people in them, and where torture is reported and over 350 people are suspected to have died. Now, prisoners who go there may well be wrong-uns, but they are British, they are human beings, and they have human rights. Are you comfortable, if you can get past the lawyers, with sending British people to prisons with those kind of conditions?
Okay.
Did Lila say that they're not British? Did she mumble? That was clearly Tim Stanley, as Simon Roberts said. And yeah, he very much goes into opinion piece mode, doesn't he? And he's funny. He talks about, uses words like wrong-uns, but it's a kind of typical fairly wet take from Stanley.
Not going to send people for trial in El Salvador. Let's make that absolutely clear. People will be tried in this country, and El Salvador might be quite an extreme example. But the idea that we could send prisoners to Kosovo, to Estonia, and everything else is a very, very serious proposal.
He's already rolling back
would
the El
we be
Salvador.
comfortable with you? Well, we'd have to. I mean, look, we would not want to think that people going there would be in danger of their lives. If we thought that, we wouldn't send them, fairly obviously. And on chemical castration,
the old El Salvador is probably the Simon Roberts says El Salvador is the sensible center. Indeed, that is what the gentleman would choose. But the Farage there, is he going for kind of Trumpian offer of like, they'll go to El Salvador, they'll be chained up on the floor with MS-13 animals. These people are animals. Is he offering that as the big kind of offer? And then actually he goes, it's Kosovo. Then actually he goes, well, it's not happening. You're in a Nightingale prison with a guy who's shoplifted for 2 weeks. Let's see. Who knows?
that is not on the list. But tell you what, over the course of the next 6 weeks, you'll hear an awful lot more from us on a whole range of subjects. So.
I'd just like to add to that point, what about the human rights of the women that have been raped, the children that have been subject to sexual abuse? Our prisons are too soft, and clearly El Salvador is an extreme example. But the point is that other countries have already got these agreements. Our prisons are too soft. If they lose some human rights about family visiting or whatever else it might be, or Sky TV in their cells, well, it's a good thing, because it's about time we got tougher with these people.
Thank you. Martin Beck from Daily
back
Mail.
in the game.
Thank you, Nigel. Martin Beck for Daily Mail. You talked about two-tier sentencing. What would you do with the judiciary? Would you want to replace judges? Would you look at electing judges as they do in some states in America? Thank you.
Well, we've got two levels of this, haven't we? We've got judges, we've got magistrates.
It's not really about the judges. It's about the sentencing guidelines and the legislation that dictates it. And that's what has to be looked at. To be fair to many of the magistrates I've faced or judges, they're applying the law. And that law was brought in by the Conservatives and Tories, and Labour. The sentencing guidelines allow for a lot of mitigation. As Sarah said, I mean, I had one where a publicly paid lawyer stood up and said, "Your worships, my client has just come from on a boat, and we must appreciate how difficult that must be for him. And because he's illegal, he can't work. So he has to commit crime." And that is the attitude some of the courts, and that is mitigation. Incredible. And as Sarah said, ADHD, anxiety, these are all mitigating factors where a criminal could avoid prison and just plays the system. So it's a reform of the whole system. And I wouldn't want to blame any judge or magistrate for just applying the system.
Well, what I'd like to add to...
Just quickly, Simon says, extreme Bukele. Very nearly said something else there that would get us in trouble. Sorry, that's juvenile.
That as well, is that I do think there is an element of the judicial system, the judges that are party to this two-tier justice, and the Lucy Connolly type examples, and the two people in my constituency that are subject to this. I know that the judge in those cases was complicit in effectively what I would consider was politically motivated sentencing. So there definitely is an element now of politically motivated sentencing in our legal system. I don't know why, or I don't know how they are under the pressure that they're under, but that would not have happened some years ago. It's happening now, and it needs to be sorted out.
Simon, you're a little bit behind there. You missed earlier saying interesting tableau for Farage optics, flanked by two professional women in steely grey outfits. I said it was like Robert Palmer, might as well face it, you're addicted to crime. I also mentioned Charlie's Angels or WWE, like they're his manager. But feel free to suggest what you think it looks like. That's the level we're on.
Thank you. Moving on to Jonathan Walker from The Express.
Thank you. Hello, Nigel. You seem to indicate in your speech that people who commit free crimes will be sort of on the road to a life imprisonment, I think was a similar phrase you used. Are you planning a sort of free strikes any out type rule? How would that work?
We're certainly moving in that direction, yes. And I repeat the stat. 50% of crime is committed by 10% of criminals. These are repeat offenders. Of course, the primary aim of any prison system should be to educate, should be to help train people, should be to help rehabilitate people. And
is that the primary aim of prison? To help people rehabilitate? I thought it was punishment. I could be wrong.
The more of that we can do, the better. But there is, I'm afraid, that certain percentage who will never be rehabilitated. He will probably use prison as a very different kind of school, how to learn to be even better criminals when they come out. And we do know that does happen in some cases. And frankly, as I said earlier, with these type of people, locking them away for a very long time serves one very important purpose. It keeps everybody else safe and away from them. So we have no difficulty in saying that whatsoever. Lucy White, Bloomberg.
Hi, all of you, and thank you for taking questions. I have three short questions for...
Three?
Chop out the same, so have to stand up.
Go on.
The first one is on fraud. You mentioned the £170 billion figure, that a huge amount and growing amount of that is through financial crime, including fraud. I've not heard you talk about that today. Can you tell me if you have any way that you plan to address that? And can you be confident relying on that 170 billion figure to say that this is going to pay for itself if a huge amount of that is coming from financial crime? The second is on criminals, aside from the ones you've spoken about today. A lot of what you've spoken about seems to be focused and concentrating on foreign offenders and migrants. A lot of the crime that we see in this country is through British people. A lot of the shoplifting we've seen is through British people. A lot of the sexual offending is from British people. Do you have a plan to address those sorts of crimes as well? And the third is, you've spoken a lot about the US kind of policies that we've seen, deportation of criminals, as Trump has done in the US. Is this another example of reform borrowing from the Trumpian playbook?
No, but we are borrowing from the Giuliani playbook, unashamedly. I think what Rudy Giuliani did to New York in the 1990s was nothing short of a blooming miracle. And as somebody who spent over 20 years working for American companies, I was a regular transatlantic commuter, and I saw what one inspired, brave leader with a New York Police Department that wanted to work with him, with a court system that acted very, very quickly. I saw what could happen, what the potential was. And I believe that London needs a Giuliani, not a Sadiq Khan. I believe that all of our capital cities need completely a different level of political leadership. Look, we are not ignoring the fact that there are many people in the criminal base in Britain who are British born and bred, whose families have been here for hundreds of years. We know there is a problem. But we also know there is a complete lack of fear. They're not fearful of being caught. Why would you fear being caught shoplifting? Because nothing's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
You can go and do it day after day after day. And a lot of that, yes, is British people. I think the foreign reference is, this is a national security emergency. What is going on in the English Channel is a national security emergency. There were 3 arrests of suspected terrorists who'd come by boat just a few weeks ago, as an example. And I think, your work in London,
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of cases you saw.
Just to point out to you, a quarter of our prisoners are foreign, which is huge. And yes, there are British-born, but we're not talking about that. A quarter of them are foreign, and we cannot deport them now because
that was the disputed stat again. Apparently, it's 12% are foreign, 27% ethnic minorities. If you want to get technical.
The ECHR, or worse, they get released early and can get put up in nice hotels while the rest of us work to fund it. It's fundamentally unfair. And from my work in London, I can tell you a vast majority are foreign. For instance, in the Westminster Magistrates, there's about 5 Arab interpreters, and you don't get that anywhere else. So there is an issue. And to your point of, you say copying the US, borrowing from the US, I think as we're a new party, we look around and see what works, and we're not wedded to any kind of idea, and what works we will implement here. Just like Nigel mentioned, Denmark deporting their prisoners.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say borrowing. I'd say that we take the best and we try and implement it here.
Yeah. Sarah?
Can I just add as well on the subject of foreign versus British defendants? What we want is equality and in the way they're treated. We're now in a situation where we haven't got them treated with fairness. We're in a 2-tier justice system. We need to bring back fairness, no matter what. I was always taught when I first became a magistrate, you go into that court, you ignore what the sex of the defendant is, you ignore, their age of the defendant. It's all about treating, or the colour of the skin. It's about treating everybody the same. That is not happening. We are suffering from 2-tier justice, and that has to change.
Okay, Noah Keat, Politico. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You've spoken about Reform UK being the toughest party on law and order. So I just wondered what your stance was in expanding the use of live facial recognition technology, as will happen at the Notting Hill Carnival this year, given that the Met Police say that that's key to identifying people who pose a threat to public safety. And just quickly, you've also spoken about clearing the court backlog. So I wonder what the party thought about restricting who had the right to a jury trial, as Lord Leverton has suggested.
There's not much point having facial recognition cameras if you're not going to punish anybody. So it's all the wrong way round. It's all the wrong way round.
He's gone full evil there.
I mean, we're talking here
That's a good answer. I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it, to try and say, well, what about facial recognition? Why can't we start our dystopian plans or advance them further? Farage discussed, why do we need, we went full Dr. Evil there. Sorry.
I mean, very much this conference today is talking about low-level crime up, that there has to be a punishment that fits crime, even if our leaders and many of our police forces now don't think shoplifting is a crime. We do. We do. So you know, if I really thought, I mean, hey, we are the most surveilled city in the world, the most surveilled country in the world. What difference has it made? Has it made us safer? Not one bit. So it's a very low priority.
Good point. Farage now is saying shoplifting is a crime. Give him a few years, we'll be going, look, cut off a couple of hands. That's all you need to do. You cut the hand off once, they never do it again. Just watch. He'll get more and more hardline until he's gone full Sharia.
I'll just jump in. There's no point in having facial recognition as long as facial coverings are a norm. And I've seen it in court where defense lawyers come up to me and said, it's blatantly his client, but he's like, you really can't prove it without reasonable doubt. So as long as we allow gangs to roam around in balaclavas, you'll get a lot more brazen. And that's happened since COVID. Police have told me that crimes become a lot more brazen because it's normal now to walk around with a COVID mask or a balaclava on an August hot day. And in terms of the jury trial, it's not as straight as you say it, because there are either way offences, and I think that's what either way offences can be tried in the magistrates or can be tried in the Crown Courts. And if you assault someone, that is a summary only trial, means it can only be tried in the magistrates. But if you assault someone and with a racial slur, it becomes either way. And defendants tend to choose the Crown Court because there's a 3 or 4 year delay, and all immigration proceedings, the deportation proceedings are stayed until that comes to court. So defendants can stay in this country for that long, and because it's a non-imprisonable offence, they're released on bail. Or worse, known criminals are released until their trial dates. So I think removing those minor offences that are only aggravated by, let's say, a racial slur, a drunken rant, will definitely free up the Crown Court, because other more serious crimes take a backseat.
A couple of things. Yes, Martin, get women and wishy-washy fairness out of politics. Sadly, Martin's right. All women have to get out of politics. I don't make the rules. I just read the chat. And also, wasn't the mask a terrible thing? Like, I feel good that I was, when I say good, I mean bleakly well, I can basically say I told you so. It's a very meager comfort. The mask was so terrible. I was completely against them the whole time. Never wore one ever. Just walked around the supermarket, the only one not wearing it. So what? No one stopped me. The fact that now you see UK aesthetics people every day, in London at least, where I live, with masks, it's either the actual COVID mask, or it's like a hoodie zipped up, or it's some sort of weird mask or semi-mask thing. And that is now every day, everywhere. People had no idea what they were doing when they said, let's all wear masks. It's like, yeah, just try that in UK aesthetics, Britain, and see how it goes. Anyway, an aside.
No. Okay, very good. Well said. Anna Gross, Financial Times.
Layla mentioned the Online Safety Act. I think you all mentioned the case of Lucy Connolly and other similar cases. And as you all know, J.D. Vance in the US has raised very serious concerns about how the Online Safety Act has been applied. Would you repeal part or all of the Act in the name of free speech, and also to eliminate two-tier policing?
It's a very good question. And I think, the current row that is going on, not row, but negotiation that's going on between us and the Americans, is over privacy and data privacy. And I think, the British government's instinct on everything is they want as much data, they want, as much potential control over their lives as they possibly can. And I frankly think the Americans are right on this. I think free speech is absolutely fundamental in our society. And I fear it's going to get even worse. I mean, if Angela Rayner pushes ahead with this definition of Islamophobia, and we start treating one religion completely differently to another religion, when it goes against the first rules that you were taught on day one as a magistrate. So look, we don't trust big government. We don't trust big government to have all of our data. We don't particularly trust them to spy on us either. And as I said earlier, what is the point of all of this? Well, crime is allowed to run amok. It all seems to be slightly the wrong way round?
No, also, the reason why I mentioned it is because I don't think a government or an official can tell me what I can and should read. I agree that an online safety bill should be there to protect children, but solely children. For instance, it came out during COVID, the online safety bill, about COVID restrictions. Is a mask good? Is a mask not? And that was misinformation, disinformation, the press's favorite word these days. For me, that just means censorship.
Just a quick note. My friend Leo Kerr says, if the government can secretly fly tens of thousands of migrants into the UK, bypassing all due process and democratic scrutiny, we can surely fly them out of the UK too using the same methods. It's a great point. And then some loser on Twitter replies, and take these human beings where exactly? And Leo says, your house. That's funny. Then the same person claims Britain's an island of settlers. Whatever. And yeah, lots of people in the chat saying they never wore masks. I knew you wouldn't have because you're all legends. Sorry.
I don't think we should bring in any speech legislation that curbs freedom of speech. We all have a right to offend, and we all have a duty to be offended.
Yeah. Bryony Williams, LBC.
A duty to be offended.
You talked about scrapping diversity and inclusion roles. Do you not think that will decimate trust in the police in some sectors of society?
No.
And also, you talked about us fearing the police. Do you not think that will create more social unrest?
No, I think we should fear police. Just like as kids, we should be slightly respectful and maybe a touch fearful of school teachers when we're 11 years old or whatever. I think, society you need just that tiny little bit of fear. And I think that for people out looking for trouble, and if they see, a couple of big strapping police officers, they'll think, well, you know what, this may not be quite such a good idea. And yet we get cases like Lawn Castle. Lawn Castle, a guy with an impeccable record, part of Dorset Police, who takes on, somebody who was suspected of really causing harm. He takes the guy on. The guy's not on his own. There's a mob next to him screaming. Lawn's on his own. A knife falls out of the guy's pocket, and yet he's now been kicked out of the police force.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is all the wrong way around. We need much, much tougher policing. And in terms of restoring trust in the police, I honestly believe that the overwhelming majority of British people want to see tough police officers on the beat in their area. I think it would restore a huge amount of trust in our police.
Can I just come in on
Nice idea. No one's ever managed to do Bobby's on the beat. No one's ever managed. Everyone says it, right? But no one's ever managed to do it again. They won't. They're not on the beat. They're off the beat, off-beat Bobbies. No one's ever seen them, ever probably. Maybe in like the 1930s or something. I don't know. I picked that decade, but it was a long time ago. If we ever saw Bobbies on the beat. Kim says I was thrown out of Aldi for not wearing a mask. I really let everyone in the shop have it. Told them all they were sheep, lambs to the slaughter. Absolutely. I wish I'd seen that.
I've worked very closely with the police in my job. I even attended a police dojo where because they invite prosecutors to attend this dojo where you mimic difficult situations they'd be in, physical ones. I have huge respect for the police, and I think we need to restore that. They put their lives on the line in the most serious consequences, and there is no respect for them. And I think with respect would come fear. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yep, absolutely. Right, we're getting there.
Just a quick one for Crispy Bacon 123. I'm here on a high skill diversity visa. Should I get my coat? And someone else says, I don't think it's people like you that we're sick of. And it's a good point. I mean, Dominic Cummings talked about this the other day, and I did a different stream on that. He says the Home Office wages a jihad, just saying another word to get me in trouble on YouTube, against the actual skilled workers, the very few actually, and they're the people that it's hardest to get in. They're the people that actually obey the rules so they don't come in. Meanwhile, they wave through endless maniacs. He said something very close to that. So, yes, exactly. We make it hard for the actual few people we might want to come in. Anyway,
I need 2 or 3 more. Theo Usherwood, Times Radio. No, not here. Right, fine. Will Hazel, the iPaper.
Thank you. Nigel, you spoke about us needing a physically tougher standard of police officer. Does that mean some people currently being hired as police officers shouldn't be? And who are these people? Can you give us an example?
Called women.
And a second question off topic,
if I may.
I've had a big speech from Liz Kendall this morning on pensions. do you think the state pension age will have to rise? I know you've said you're not going to get into detail of what you might do about the triple lock, or you'll do it before the election. Yeah. But lots of people are concerned that is increasingly unaffordable. Do you share that concern?
I share the concern with pensions being unaffordable at a national level. I also share the concern of the absolute scandal of the private pensions industry, which has served people terribly, but done frightfully well for itself. And I fear a budget coming up in the autumn that will discourage people from saving and actually drive more people on being wholly reliant on the state when they finally reach old age or have to go to a care home. So it's a big, complex area. Frank Field was told to go away and think the unthinkable. He did, and Blair got rid of him. And we're going to have to face the reality that if people are living longer and longer, then inevitably retirement age is going to have to rise.
Yeah, that's so funny when he says Frank Field was told to go away and think the unthinkable, then Blair sacked him. Think the unthinkable. All right, not that unthinkable, mate. This thing about retirement age, of course it's going to have to go up. But that's better than encouraging old people to off themselves like Matthew Paris did in that article, like we have now with the assisted dying. The only problem with that, I was thinking about that, is the only problem is always that people doing the tough labouring jobs, they have to retire because it's physically impossible. So you have to make some sort of distinction between people doing those jobs and other jobs. And maybe the people who've done labouring jobs could do other jobs. I don't know how the hell it's going to work. But it's obviously pretty low these days, retirement. Obviously not as low as France, but, we're not insane.
How quickly that happens, when it happens, but I think it's actually an inevitability, just given where we are. And, let's face it, the country's getting poorer. We con ourselves that GDP is up. Of course it's up. We're running massive budget deficits, and we've got the population increasing by up to 1 million people net every year. GDP's up because the cake's bigger. The individual share of that cake is actually lower. And if you look at GDP per capita, you'll find that in a majority of quarters over the last 3 years, it has actually gone down. Right, two more. Sorry. Oh, look, we're not looking to sack police officers. We're looking to hire police officers. We just think that a better physical standard is needed, and we believe that through DEI, we have lowered standards, and that is our firm, strong belief.
Yeah, people in the police will tell you, or former police officers, how those beep test standards have gone down. And they're like standards that I could easily do just because I go to the gym a bit. You hear like the beep test, and you're like, it's ridiculously easy. They made it so easy. It's insane. It should be hard again to get in. Paradoxically, probably more people want to get in, because if you make it actually hard to get in, men will go, hang on, that's something I want to aspire to. That's the paradox. If any 5-foot woman can do it, there's no real point, is there?
Apologies. Right, two more. Eleni Courier from The Guardian.
Thank you. Nigel Farage, after the election, there was a controversy over one of your MPs, James McMurdoch, who had a past conviction for assaulting a girlfriend after repeatedly kicking her. He spent a week in a young offenders institution. Is that the kind of case where you would have liked to see in the future a stronger punishment?
Classic Guardian.
And at the time, the party put out a statement saying it believes strongly that people can change their lives, and that's why James McMurdoch could remain a Reform MP. Is that something that you believe? And will you tell us more about your plans to rehabilitate criminals?
I think I made it very, very clear that first-time offenders, we should do everything we can to try and steer them back onto the right path. And the reason that I did defend him then, as strongly as I did, I thought here was a very good case of somebody who had rehabilitated, who had gone on to live a constructive life, when so many young lads from his part of the world, after their first brush with the law, then spend the next 40 years in and out of prison, which does happen all too often. So do we believe there should be rehabilitation? Do we believe that first-time prisoners should be given access to education, to learning skills? Absolutely we do. And we understand that a lot of people like that will have come from backgrounds where, frankly, they've come from difficult family situations, where they've not had a good education given to them at school. They might not have been suited to learning in that way. So the answer is yes, of course. But, it
was actually a good answer. The Guardian's slimy little question like, oh, do you mean people like James McMurdoch then? Would you rehabilitate him? And Farage's like, yes, because he's a first offender who changed his life. So yes, it's slimy Guardian stuff.
What we have to send people like that, a message that all crime is wrong and bad and all crime will be punished. That's the point, you know, and we need to have a lot more respect for each other in society. And if that means taking out a percentage of the population who are making lives utterly miserable for everybody else, and if that means putting them in prison for much longer, then we absolutely believe that it's right and proper that we should do so. Last question, David Burke from The Mirror.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm going to be a villain and ask you three very quick ones, if I may. The first one, we've heard a bit from you on enforcement of social media, things that people say. We've seen in the last 24 hours, a member of the Lionesses squad has talked about some of the horrendous abuse that she's endured. Are you able to clarify what your position is on this? If someone posts some horrendous racist abuse, for example, how proactively should police be chasing this and what should they be doing? I mean, is it a case of just hurty words as has been described previously by some politicians, or do you think that police should be sort of recognising that this has real world consequences on victims?
It's not hurty words, it's called free speech, you moron.
Second question, if I may. You've mentioned the possible 3 strikes. Would you envisage that applying to Tommy Robinson? My third question, very quickly, you've talked about some of the issues relate to drugs and the impact that has. Would you, in a case where a Reform MP, councillor or staffer was found taking drugs like cocaine or ketamine or any other, would you kick them out?
Okay. Well, I suppose on that third question, I mean, I always believe in second chances in life. You know, if people offend in a way, you say, well, look, you know, you're on notice. Luckily, I've not had to deal with any of those cases. As far as Mr. Robinson's concerned, I don't think his recent convictions have been for violent crime. I think they've been for contempt of court. And serious though that is, it doesn't quite fall into the same category. And on social media, look, abuse on social media is rife. And you can have my account for a day if you like, and see some of that. And look, you know, of course, the limit to free speech, there is a limit to free speech of incitement, of shouting fire in a theatre, of all of those things. And, you know, people should have their wrists slapped if they behave like that. But there's a difference between a wrist being slapped and, as Sarah outlined in 3 particular cases earlier on, you know, somebody who previously has had an impeccable record, you know, serving lengthy prison sentences. So it's about balance. Ladies.
Sorry to be a bore, but or a pedant, but Farage does the classic fire in a crowded theatre example there. Totally misunderstood example. Came in, it was in a trial in 1919 from Oliver Wendell Holmes, and he was citing it from an early trial from a guy called Hertz, I think. Anyway, it was about, in the Holmes case, it was about people arguing against the draft in World War I, and he was just using it as an analogy about the limits of free speech. But actually, as Brandenburg 1969, I believe, Brandenburg versus Ohio, from my memory, showed that it actually wasn't a problem to say shout fire in a crowded theatre in many cases. Only if there was a stampede and then it led to death could it then be, well, that's manslaughter. But actually, even if you shout fire in a crowded theatre, even in the US, if there's no fire or no reason to think there's a fire, still not necessarily a crime. So this idea people think that shouting fire in a crowded theatre is automatically a crime or a free speech issue is not even the case. It's just one of these wrong midwit things that people say, just FYI, in case you didn't know. I'm sure you did.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Can I just add one thing? As a Muslim myself, I've faced a lot since I've come to Reform, a lot of racism online, which I could screenshot and send and make a big deal. Their words, their people's opinions. It's just the way it is. Once you're a public figure, I think, or once you speak out, whether you're public or not, it just comes with the game, sadly.
Not nice.
But it's not a crime.
Thank you. Marvellous.
She messed up the ending. She wasn't supposed to take the ending. It was supposed to end on Farage, and she suddenly just jumped in because she was supposed to jump in early. It's like, no, don't jump in now. And then she also said that since she's been in Reform, she's got a load of abuse, which implies that Reform are against Muslims. So that was a cock up as well. Quite funny. I guess that's it. All right. I didn't expect it to go quite that long, actually, but hey, got some value. People say make yourself bigger at the ending. I don't particularly want to, but thank you very much, everyone. You know, just thought I'd do this, just trying out the live streams on different topics for a bit of a laugh. I'm going to do one on Tolkien. I've got loads of ideas. It'd be good to get someone on to help me so I don't have to do all the hard work and get some banter going. But anyway, let's have a quick look. Yeah, Simon says second chances for everyone except for the candidates you get hope not hate to vet for you. It is mad that they ever work with them and completely disgusting and insane. Farage isn't the answer. He will flop, says documenting decline. Aren't we all just documenting decline? Well, yes, probably. I think she ended it better than he could have, to be honest, lol. Yeah, well, maybe. But it's just funny where she took the ending over. How long is that going to work? That won't work with Farage. If she does that a couple more times, she'll be out. She'll be like getting too big for her boots. But thank you very much. English Gent says, cheers for doing this. Save me on to watch myself. Yeah, I'll go because it's late and it's not that late, but I'm tired from the gym. I did a podcast with Paul today that will go out tomorrow for people on nickdixon.net. And the Lee one came out. I thought I'd do this because my other podcast got cancelled and I feel guilty if I'm not just doing constant podcasts and things. So I thought I'd just quickly do this. Bit of fun. Quite a dry topic in a way, the press conference. I'm trying to wait. Oh, I might do one on that Mehdi Hassan debate. Is that his name? Mehdi, whatever he's called. Which I watched the whole thing of, but I don't know if I'll get copyright strikes or something. He debated 20 so-called far-right people, Mehdi Hassan. Some of them actually were far-right, some of them weren't. It's quite bonkers. And one of my tweets about it has got 1 million views, incredibly. And I've got another tweet with 1 million views. Anyway, I might do one on that. But let's see. Thanks so much for coming along, everyone. And unless anyone's got anything they want to say, I guess I'll go. I don't really know how to end these yet. It's all new. But I'll see you very soon. I've got, what else? What day is it? Monday. Yeah, the next thing is, if you're on nickdixon.net, there'll be something tomorrow. And if you're on YouTube, there'll be Dixon Cox topical podcast on Wednesday. So I'll see you very soon. And go to nickdixon.net for all my extra content. Thank you, Hugh. Hugh's already on there because he's a total legend. And thanks everyone else. And I'll see you soon. Goodbye. I always say goodbye, and then you've got to click an extra separate button. Goodbye, goodbye.